The summer of 2021 is turning into the summer of 5G, with a whole raft of new cellular integrated 5G routers joining existing hotspots and smartphones on the market. Does that mean it's time to start upgrading all your old gear? We've got some considerations and a major 5G update for you today. Hi, I'm Chris at the Mobile Internet Resource Center, here to give you a kind of a big state of the industry update on 5G, that is 5th generation cellular, to let you know where things stand here going into the middle of 2021. So to give you just kind of a quick recap of, well, just what is 5G. 5G is 5th generation cellular. It's building on 4G, evolving from 4G, and it is basically laying the groundwork for the next decade of cellular evolution. So while 5G does enable some major jumps in performance, and it's kind of a transformational technology, it is starting on the foundation of 4G. And so day one, in a lot of places, in a lot of use cases, it's just starting at the point of really good 4G and just, well, giving a place for the cellular networks and the cellular devices to build on and advance from there over the next decade. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. With 5th generation cellular, it's starting on top of 4G, and it is not instantly, automatically magic. It's just a new symbol up on the corner of your phone in some cases, with not a lot extra to show for it. But 5G is, fundamentally, it is inside the phones and inside all these devices, new technology that starts to unlock a lot of exciting new potential. So one of the things that 5G enables is a lot more spectrum to be put to use for cellular data. This spectrum is the invisible highways through the sky, and well, there's a lot more capacity, more lanes of these invisible highways that can be used for data in 5G. Now there's 3 kind of like flavors of these highways with different traits that 5G networks are being deployed across. There's low band, mid band, and millimeter wave, super high frequency spectrum. So low band is kind of basically the bottom layer of the cake. It's long range spectrum. It's not necessarily super fast, and it's basically, a lot of the spectrums already is what is in use for 4G. So to use it for 5G, well, you've got to either turn off the 4G on it or find ways to overlay 4G and 5G onto the same low band spectrum. There's that spectrum's out there now. At the top of the cake, you've got what's called millimeter wave spectrum. This is super high frequency. This is basically kind of high frequency, almost crazy sci-fi type stuff that lets you send amazing amounts of data, super fast expressways through the sky. But the super high frequency signals, just by the laws of physics, do not travel very far. So you've got millimeter wave signals that can blanket an area with multi-gigabit cellular speeds. It sounds almost impossible, but that signal won't penetrate very far. It'll go down a block, but not a mile. It will not penetrate through walls or windows very well at all. So it is wonderful if you want to give fast, super fast speeds to everybody, 100,000 people in a stadium, but it is not great for covering a wide area. Now, in between, you've got what's called mid-band spectrum. This is still pretty high frequency, but it is spectrum that can still carry a lot of data, but travel a reasonable distance. So you can deploy mid-band, and that is where the bulk of what's going to be kind of the truly next generation potential of 5G comes into play, because this isn't the spectrum that is being used for 4G. It is big, open, wide open new spectrum, allows for a lot more speed, still covering a decent range, and well, it builds a foundation for combining with low band below it for extra range and millimeter wave above it for extra turbo speed in core areas. So you've got these kind of like 3 flavors of 5G coming out, and all the carriers are planning to use all 3 different types of flavors, all 3 different layers in their network layer cakes, but they're all starting in different places and building them out in different orders. And well, we're kind of going to give you a snapshot of what's the state of things. Where does 5G stand with each of the carriers right now in the United States? So first off, starting with Verizon and the state of Verizon's 5G network. Now, Verizon has been focusing a lot of their efforts on millimeter wave. This has been kind of their core area of differentiation, and they've rolled out more millimeter wave than any other cellular carrier in the world. They're pushing it in a lot of places, but that still comes down to only tiny parts of 70 cities. So there's not a lot of places that you can get millimeter wave connections on Verizon, but if you do, you'll get real world speeds over a gigabit per second. You'll get absolutely insane speeds, but less than 1% of Verizon customers have that signal anywhere near them. So that's the downside of millimeter wave. It's super, super fast, but doesn't cover a lot of people. But hey, Verizon can get some bragging rights with those crazy gigabit speeds. Verizon has been using a technology called a DSS, or Dynamic Spectrum Sharing, which is layering 5G on top of existing 4G. And that gives you a lot more coverage. Where they've turned this on, they've been able to start expanding what they call nationwide 5G, and you get a legit real 5G up in the corner of your phone. Wow, you've got 5G connection. But it's just layered on top of 4G, and that means laws of physics don't change. You can only send so much data through the same collections of airwaves. So in a lot of these places, it's just a really good 4G connection with a 5G label in the corner for Verizon. So it's nothing truly transformative or next generation, and could be kind of disappointing if you pay for a lot of expensive gear, upgrade to 5G. If you're not in one of these millimeter wave areas, or you have gear that doesn't support millimeter wave, which a lot of cellular routers aren't bothering to implement it, you're going to turn on, you're going to connect to 5G, and you're not going to see much of a performance advantage on Verizon. Oh, well, wow, why'd you upgrade now? What Verizon is doing is they are investing in a mid-band spectrum called C-band. They've spent billions of dollars to begin buying this spectrum, but they're not going to be able to start taking advantage of that until very late 2021, primarily into 2022. And that's when Verizon's network will start to have kind of a wider range of truly next generation 5G performance. So if you're considering 5G on Verizon, it can't hurt to have a 5G phone right now, but do you really want to spend a lot of money on 5G hotspots and 5G other gear if you're not going to be in those areas where you can take advantage of it just yet? So that's kind of the state of Verizon. Maybe you want to keep waiting just a little bit longer. Next up, AT&T. AT&T also is, like Verizon, has been doing a little bit of millimeter wave, and then what they're calling their nationwide 5G network is out there as well. It's covering more territory than Verizon's because they've been able to set aside, rather than using dynamic spectrum sharing to layer 4G and 5G on top of the same bands, they set aside basically one of their channels on LTE band 5, they dedicated that to 5G, but it is basically half of an LTE channel dedicated to 5G, gives them some nationwide coverage, but it is really slow, nothing special, nothing to write home about 5G coverage. So again, on Verizon, on AT&T, you'll get the little 5G up in the corner of your device, on your phone or on your hotspot, but in a lot of places, it's really not going to be that great. It'll be a really good 4G connection equivalent, but it's just 5G combined using carrier aggregation with a bunch of 4G channels. So it's tiny little veneer of 5G on top of a 4G base is what AT&T's network is basically doing right now. And, if you get a 5G device on AT&T, you might see some amazing performance, but you'd see that almost that exact same amazing performance if you had a modern, fully upgraded, Cat 18 equivalent 4G device. So you don't need 5G to get all this great performance that AT&T has been upgrading their network for. Now, again, just like Verizon, AT&T is investing in band 77, the C-band spectrum that is going to give them this more next generation 5G experience going forward into the years ahead. But they're not quite as pushing that as hard as Verizon, so they're more I'm going to have a slower pace bringing out the C-band and transforming their network. So again, AT&T's, their 4G network is actually really, really great, but you don't necessarily need to jump ahead into 5G to take advantage of all the network upgrades they've been doing. Next up, we have T-Mobile. Now, T-Mobile back in the 4G era, they were the third place carrier. They were lagging behind Verizon and AT&T when it came to rolling out 4G, and they've been determined from the start they don't want to be in third place ever again when it comes to 5G, and they've been investing harder, faster than any other carriers in trying to be a leader in bringing out a real next generation 5G experience. So T-Mobile is doing this with two flavors of 5G, and they've got two marketing names for this. They've got one they call Extended Range 5G. Now this is the 600 megahertz spectrum that T-Mobile won at auction several years ago. They set aside some of that as Band 71 long range LTE, but they actually kept the bulk of that spectrum that they won nationwide set aside, planning ahead for 5G. So as 5G devices and networks and hardware became available, they were able to turn all the spectrum on nationwide and basically really enable a full nationwide 5G coverage map. They like to boast that they have more 5G coverage than AT&T and Verizon combined because of this wide 600 megahertz coverage. But again, this is still a low band 5G that is marginal speed, but it's going to give great penetration into buildings, and they already do have a great coverage map, and it's expanding rapidly. And then, T-Mobile has done a little bit of millimeter wave deployments and stuff, but again, that's not their focus. They are the leaders in mid-band deployments because, they bought Sprint. And the reason they bought Sprint wasn't all the Sprint customers, wasn't all the Sprint anything. It was that Sprint already owned a whole bunch of mid-band spectrum that was not being used, and T-Mobile has been able to take that and start turning on mid-band 5G much more rapidly than any of the other carriers, and they're calling this ultra capacity 5G is their marketing term for it. So they've started to roll out ultra capacity 5G in a whole bunch of cities. They're planning to have coverage reaching 200 million people, so a significant portion of the people in the country by the end of 2021 with this ultra capacity 5G. And this is going to give you a truly next generation experience. They like to say it's cellular as fast as Wi-Fi. Certainly, probably a lot faster than campground Wi-Fi and marina Wi-Fi that we're all used to. But they're rolling out a real next generation experience. So T-Mobile, unlike AT&T or Verizon, if you have 5G gear, you have the potential to tap into something that would give you a really next generation experience, at least in a lot more places. It is still, that next generation experience is still relatively small and limited, but expanding fast and certainly kind of exciting. Now, even T-Mobile customers, though, we'll explain in just a minute, might want to wait and consider, there's certain things about their coverage that the current generation of 5G devices won't be able to take advantage of. So there still might be a reason to want to wait and upgrade if you can, if it's practical for you. Okay, so that was an update on the state of the carriers and their 5G network rollouts. They're getting started, they're making a lot of progress, but again, this is going to be a 10-year-long process of 5G rolling out. You don't necessarily want to be too far ahead of the curve buying hardware to take advantage of these networks. But then again, the hardware's starting to come out. So let's give you the latest on the state of 5G mobile internet hardware. So, of course, 5G smartphones are becoming pretty common. The iPhone 12 last year, and pretty much all the flagship Androids are now 5G, and they're great phones. There's not really a trade-off. Like some of the very first generation of 5G phones, they were avoid, not something to get. Now, there's really not a lot of downside to having a 5G phone. You might not get a real great 5G next generation experience in a lot of places, but there's no downside to the 5G phones. We're also starting to see 5G mobile hotspots, like we've got the Netgear Nighthawk 5G from AT&T, the Inseego M2100 that is on Verizon, and the M2000 version is almost identical, just without millimeter wave antennas inside of it on T-Mobile. So we're seeing 5G hotspots. Again, they're more expensive than the 4G flagships they're replacing, and a lot of places you don't really see a huge advantage with them, so maybe not worth investing in just yet, or maybe hold on for the next generation. And what's new coming summer of 2021 is 5G cellular integrated routers. So if you've got more demanding networking needs on your boat or your RV, and you want a cellular integrated router, finally you're getting some 5G choices. Like this is the PepWave Max Transit 5G. We've been getting hands-on time with this since March. Just in the last week, the PepWave Max BR1 5G has been announced, which has actually got some technical advantages over, this is supposedly its big brother, but the new BR1 5G's actually got some advancements. Check our last news story for details of that. We'll be getting that hands-on soon. There's things like the Insty Connect. The 5G version of that is scheduled to come out this summer. The new generation MoFi 5500, there's a 5G version of that scheduled to come out later this summer. And there's some other enterprise kind of prosumer level 5G routers from Cradlepoint and Sierra Wireless, and probably yet more to come, because, well, there's kind of like a little explosion of 5G hardware about to happen. Now, there's all of these products are very, very different in feature sets. They're targeting very different market segments. They have different overall performance levels. But every single one of these, as best that we know, have one thing in common, and they're all actually using the same exact 5G modem chipset. And this is the Qualcomm Snapdragon X55. And, okay, so what is a modem chipset? Why does this matter? And why does it matter that they're all using the same one? Just to give you the bit of the basics, the modem is the chip that inside that communicates from a device to the cellular network. It's basically the translator. And Qualcomm has been the leader in developing 5G technology, and in the United States at least, they are basically completely dominant when it comes to the current generations of 5G modem chips. In the future, there will be other manufacturers, other chips, and other things. But right now, basically everybody is building their 5G devices on exactly the same technical foundation. And so understanding the Qualcomm chips and the different versions of them can help you understand, like, well, does it make sense to buy a 5G device this year? Or is the Qualcomm chip that'll be in next year's device or later this year or whatnot have some important features that might be worth waiting for? And so this is going to be a little bit geeky, but this could actually save you a lot in the long run to understand this. So we're going to try to explain Qualcomm's modem product lineup and why it might just make sense to skip over some of the current generation and wait till the next generation comes out. So first off, Qualcomm has already announced 4 generations of 5G modem chipsets. For a lot of us, it's like, oh, 5G seems brand new, but no, this has been in the works for a long time. And actually, the first Qualcomm 5G modem, the Snapdragon X50, was announced way back in 2018 and powered some of these like very early 5G devices. The first generation Nighthawk 5G. There was a hotspot on Verizon. There was some early 5G phones that used this X50 chip. And we put out warnings at the time saying, do not get this. The X50 was basically kind of a proof of concept. It let carriers and device makers show off some raw 5G potential, but it had some huge limitations. In particular, the hardware did not support dynamic spectrum sharing to combine 4G and 5G together. And the X50 didn't have support for 4G frequencies and 4G communication, so it couldn't fall back from 5G to 4G. And because this Qualcomm's second generation modem, the X55, was announced in early 2019 and basically started shipping in 2020 and powered a lot of the flagship devices, the flagship phones announced in 2020, including the iPhone 12 uses the X55 modem in it. And it's great. The X55 supports most of all the standards that the carriers are rolling out to enable 5G, but it has some key limitations. The huge improvement with the X60 is that it actually can connect to all 3 types of frequency bands: millimeter wave, FDD, TDD, low band, mid band. All of these things can connect to them all at once and combine them, and that's going to let the X60 have a lot better performance and range in kind of this sort of fringe, longer range areas where RVers and cruisers tend to be. So if you, to be very specific with this, is like, the carriers, what they're rolling out. T-Mobile is an example. They've rolled out their mid-band on band N41, their extra capacity, ultra capacity on 5G. that is all built on TDD spectrum. And their long-range band 71 is FDD. The X55 cannot use both of those bands at once. It cannot take advantage of combining them via 5G carrier aggregation to get the best of both worlds, range and speed at the same time. The X60 can. So that's the reason that you might want to consider waiting for X60 powered devices. When can you get them? Some of the flagship smartphones that have been announced in early 2021, starting with the Samsung Galaxy S21 and a few other top-end Android smartphones, now incorporate the Snapdragon X60. It's actually built into their CPU. The Qualcomm also builds CPUs. The Snapdragon 888 includes the X60 inside it and has all these capabilities. As we go into the rest of 2021, we'll start to see other high-end smartphones. Certainly the iPhone 13 and everything else will start to use this next-generation modem. And, well, cellular routers and hotspots always lag behind phones. So maybe by the end of the year, maybe into 2022, we will start to see that level of technology reaching smartphones and cellular routers. And, well, if you invest this year, you might be kind of wishing you hadn't once this next generation stuff comes out, particularly when you consider that by the time X60 modems are out there, that's about the time the networks will have evolved enough to really start to let the 5G hardware totally shine. So does that mean wait till next year and this is the time to embrace everything? Well, then there'll be the next Qualcomm chipset. They've already announced the Snapdragon X65. That is the follow-on to the X60. They announced it in early 2021. It'll probably start powering devices in early 2022. But that one isn't quite as transformational because it's still uses the same bands and everything else like that. It just enables them to go faster. It enables it to be a lot more power efficient. They're going to have lower cost versions of it so that 5G, high-performance 5G can become real true mainstream prices and stuff like that. It enables things like 8 antenna MIMO receiving, so you can have 8 antennas reception. It enables a lot of cool new stuff, but the big transformative one is probably the X60, and you've got to decide the trade-offs. Do you want to embrace technology now, or, well, the universal law, there's always going to be something better, faster, and cheaper available 10 minutes after you buy something today. Now, the other area of 5G hardware we get asked about is 5G signal enhancing, cellular antennas and cellular boosters. And some of them, a lot of antennas are now being marketed as 5G ready. There are boosters out there that are being marketed as 5G ready. What does that mean? Is there a reason to wait on buying those, or should you be able to buy those now? Now, antennas in particular actually might make sense to invest in sooner rather than later, because if you put in a 5G ready antenna now, and even if you're still keeping your 4G gear that you're happy with until putting off your 5G router upgrades for another year or two, well, the 5G antenna is going to work great as a 4G antenna as well. And, well, the reverse isn't necessarily true. If you have a 4G antenna and you're looking to upgrade it, a 4G antenna is probably not going to support the full wide range of bands that a 5G antenna does. So if you're shopping now, you're deferring your router purchase and you're buying a 5G antenna, that could be very, very reasonable. Now, we've done recent videos and articles talking about 5G and antennas, so dive deep into that. And this is an area where the technology could make sense to be investing in. Next up, 5G boosters. And, well, a lot of the booster manufacturers have started to say, hey, our boosters are 5G ready. Don't be afraid to buy a booster. Yes and no. So these 4G boosters, the booster doesn't know a lick of difference between 4G and 5G. If it's a signal on one of the bands that the booster supports, it hears the signal and it amplifies it. The catch is, so if the booster supports, like say AT&T's baseline 5G across the country is on band 5, boosters support band 5 and they will boost that, and you're getting a stronger 5G signal on AT&T, but that is just a baseline signal layered on top of their 4G network, and it is not really going to be any of the next generation true performance differentiated 5G. The boosters that exist today have no idea how to boost any of these other bands. All they do is boost these bands that are already in use for 4G. The carriers are either overlaying or carving off a slice of those bands for 5G. They will boost them as well. But most of the bulk of the real benefit for 5G, the boosters can't even touch. So it's not really, the FCC is not likely to be approving any new major generation of 5G boosters anytime soon. So again, it's not really something to worry about, stress too much about. And any booster that worked in the 4G era will still have some benefit in the 5G world, just not nearly as much as you might hope. And, well, then finally, there is the elephant in the room. It is 5G data plans. It's not so great to be on a next-generation cellular network with a next-generation device capable of absolutely insane performance if you still have 100 gigabyte data cap and your video throttled to 480p resolution. I mean, it's almost kind of what's the point? This is a problem. The carriers really have not taken advantage of 5G to roll out better, more generous, more high-performance data plans that let you share that connection. They're all eager to show off 5G potential on your device, whether it's a 5G phone or tablet. They're giving you real unlimited plans that'll let you use a lot of data on your device, but they're very, very hesitant to roll out ways to let people share those big, fast connections, at least until they've done the work to have more capacity on their networks. So we're hoping that once the 5G networks mature, the carriers maybe will get a little bit more comfortable with big data plans and such like that. But right now, before you're investing in a 5G router, make sure you understand what data plans you can get for it and what the limitations are, because you might have a Ferrari and be stuck driving through a school zone for the next several years. So keep that in mind. Data plans are critically important and are an area that is extra challenging for the time being. So to kind of wrap things up, don't want to rain on your 5G parade. The technology is exciting. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. There's not really necessarily much of a downside to getting some of this 5G gear, because any of this 5G gear is going to be a supreme top-end 4G device. So even if you're not connecting to 5G all the time, or even if you're intentionally disabling 5G, because, well, there are actually quite a few places where 4G might outperform 5G for at least the next year or two. The 5G devices you buy today will be wonderful 4G devices. They'll be able to outclass older 4G devices. But particularly when it comes to things that are expensive and that you're going to want to have in service for several years, like routers and some of the higher end hotspots, maybe it makes sense to just wait 6 months, 12 months, maybe even a little bit longer before embracing taking that jump to 5G cellular. It's exciting times. But the key thing is understanding what your needs are. Don't try to future-proof too far ahead of the curve, and just wait for the technology, the networks, and everything else to catch up and meet your needs, and that's the time you should choose to invest. So there's a big in-depth article that goes along with this video. Go check that out at our site. We go into a lot more depth. We explain some of the deeper technical implications of these different generations of 5G hardware. And again, big in-depth content like this takes a lot of time and effort to research and produce, and it is all thanks to our members who support our site, the Mobile Internet Aficionados. So if you are into this stuff and you want to have access to our hands-on testing notes, where we've been sharing upsides and downsides and performance numbers and discoveries playing with this 5G gear, join us in our member areas. You can go join the Mobile Internet Aficionados and go deeper with us. We welcome you to come see us there.
These videos are brought to you by our premium members, our Mobile Internet Aficionados. They make it possible for us to track this news and create these videos. If you like this video, Please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, or better yet, consider becoming a member yourself.